Democrats are in hot water as they try to defend a suspected gang member who was recently deported to El Salvador. In order to know what's going on, we first have to know who this man is. Let's begin with what Homeland Security knows about him and the circumstances under which he was detained. His name is Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He is 23 years old and he works as a laborer at the time of his arrest. Homeland Security has included a detailed report as to why they think Kilmar is a member of MS-13. It explains how Kilmar and Jose Guillermo, a man involved in a murder investigation, made contact with Prince George's County Police Department on March 24, 2019. The next day, ICE officers apprehended these two individuals and took them into custody. Kilmar was found with nearly $1,200 in loose cash at the time of his arrest. This is not a good look for someone claiming he has no affiliation with gangs. An incident report from a few days later shows how Kilmar was still hanging out with known MS-13 gang members. Jose Guillermo was later identified through his tattoos as an active member as well. The Trump administration asserts that Kilmar is a threat to public safety. This court order from around 2020 shows how Kilmar was abusive to his wife. This handwritten letter from 2021 details why the court order was issued. In it, Kilmar's wife documents multiple occurrences of violent behavior. In 2021, Kilmar is accused of, quote, putting pressure on his baby in order to get it to stop crying. Later that day, she got into another altercation with him where he rips off all her clothes and forces her to run to the bathroom for safety. In 2019, while in DHS custody, a judge concluded that Kilmar was an active gang member, quoting, "The evidence shows that he is a member of MS-13. The only real defense he could provide to the accusations was challenging the detective to a cross-examination." I want everyone to consider for a moment what would happen to this detective after his identity became common knowledge. This is exactly what the gangs want. They want the ability to cross-examine a detective so his identity becomes exposed and they know exactly who was seeded into their organization. This is how gangs have been able to operate so smoothly because they use our own laws against us.
There is no Maryland father. Let me reiterate. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is an illegal alien, MS-13 gang member, and foreign terrorist who was deported back to his home country. And when Kilmar Abrego Garcia was originally arrested, he was wearing a sweatshirt with rolls of money covering the ears, mouth, and eyes of presidents on various currency denominations. This is a known MS-13 gang symbol of hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Nothing will change the fact that Abrego Garcia will never be a Maryland father. He will never live in the United States of America again.
So he's wearing the Chicago Bulls hat that signifies him as a member in good standing with MS-13, and he's wearing a sweatshirt which is also affiliated with that gang while he's hanging out with other members of MS-13. It really doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this one out.
Democrats' innocent Maryland dad? He crossed the border illegally through the Texas desert, migrated to Maryland, got pulled over 4 times there, and was never deported because it's a sanctuary state. And he skipped every traffic court hearing. Garcia in 2019 was arrested in a gang sweep. He was detained in connection to a murder investigation and was picked up in a frequent gang area. According to the police report, the detective picked him up with 3 active members of MS-13. One of them ranking members. Garcia tossed marijuana out of his pocket when the detective approached, and when he was frisked, Garcia had $1,000 in cash. He was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat, which the detective says means they're members in good standing with MS-13. He was also wearing a hoodie with a known gang insignia. Officers contacted a reliable informant who confirmed that Garcia was an active member of MS-13 with the Westerns clique. The source said he had the rank of Chiqueo with the moniker of Chele. Now, how do we know he just didn't randomly run into these guys? Quote, officers know MS-13 gang members are only allowed to hang around with other members or prospects for the gang. Is this your average Maryland father?
This is where things get a little ridiculous, as Senator Van Hollen from Maryland has decided to go to El Salvador in an attempt to rescue this man from prison, as if he has nothing better to do. Here's a montage of this silly man and his trip to El Salvador.
I'm here at the airport. I'm about to board my flight for San Salvador. The goal of this mission is to let the Trump administration, to let the government of El Salvador know that we are going to keep fighting to bring Abrego Garcia home until he returns to his family. I hope to meet with representatives of the government. I hope to have the chance to actually see Kilmar and see what his condition is. But we are going to keep fighting because this is a miscarriage of justice. The Supreme Court has ruled 9-0, that he was illegally taken out of the country and put in a prison in El Salvador. And this is about due process. This is about rule of law. What bullies do is they begin by picking on the most vulnerable. But if we get rid of the rule of law and due process in the United States, it's a short road from there to tyranny.
So you flew all the way to El Salvador to free what is 99% likely to be a gang member based on a technicality. That's what you think the priority of America should be right now. That's a good use of your time. Let's see more of what this all-star has to say during his visit.
U.S. courts have determined that he was illegally abducted from the United States and now finds himself in the most notorious prison in El Salvador. The Supreme Court, 9-0, has told the Trump administration they must facilitate his return home. They've refused to do it. So I called upon the government of El Salvador to do it unless they can provide evidence that he's been involved in MS-13. They said they had no evidence. So this is not about MS-13. I know President Trump wants to make this about gang violence. I have been fighting MS-13 probably longer than Donald Trump even knew about MS-13. I care about every victim of crime. That's why we have a court system to hold people accountable when they commit crimes, to make sure that they get the punishment they deserve. We also have a court system to make sure that people who have not committed crimes or not been convicted of crimes are not disappeared out of the United States and sent to a notorious prison in El Salvador, like Abrego Garcia. This is simply about letting him have his day in court. We use the courts to make sure that we don't convict people who are not guilty and that we convict those who are.
For someone who claims to be an expert on MS-13, he sure seems gullible. Here's more of his antics.
I'm here with Chris Newman, who is the attorney for the wife and mother of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And we just tried to go visit him in prison just to check on his conditions. Is he doing okay? Because nobody has any communication with him since he was illegally abducted from Maryland and sent to Sikot prison in El Salvador, which is a U.S. District Court judge said was a violation of all his due process rights. Today's purpose was just to see what his health condition is. And these soldiers were ordered to prevent us from going any farther from this spot. I understand we're about 3 kilometers now from Sikot. And as you can see, they're letting other cars go by, but they stopped us because they're under orders not to allow us to proceed to check on the well-being of Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Good for them. The president of El Salvador isn't interested in your political theater. I think we've all seen enough to formulate our own opinions about Kilmar. To those of you who still think he's some innocent Maryland father, you've probably never been to a bad neighborhood in your life, let alone been around a gang member. I have. Asking informants to go on the stand to be cross-examined by the people they identify is a sure recipe to never take these gangs down. Thank you for having watched this video. Remember to like and subscribe so you can help me produce more content like this.